recorded, get started with our meeting right now. All of you have received a list of the 3 bills that we're going to be discussing this afternoon. And the 3 bills that we're going to be discussing are HB 13. We're going to be discussing HB 143, and we're also going to be discussing HB 216. We will not be taking them up in that order, however. The order of discussion for these bills will be as follows. It will be HR 13 first. Secondly, will be HB 216. And then the final bill we're going to discuss is HB 143. Okay? 13, 216, and finally 143 in that order. So let's begin with HB 216. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very, very brief introduction of the bill, history, and then Ben, if you could do a very brief summary of the legislation, and then we'll start taking some discussion from that point. HB 216, this is Delegate Charkoudian's bill, and this is a bill that we heard last year. Last year, it was HB 101, and this bill passed out of the General Assembly last year, 137-0. The bill that is before us right now is the same bill that came out of the House last year, HB 101, 137-0, with no amendments to it at all. With that, Ben, if you could tell us what this bill does, I'd appreciate it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think HB 13 is the one that passed the House 137-0, and that was with Delegate Lewis. Did you want me to cover HB 13 or HB?
Yeah, 13,
okay,
yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, HB 13, that authorizes condominiums to be established on a leasehold estate that is owned by an affordable housing land trust. So you may remember from the bill hearing yesterday that under current law, a leasehold estate may not be subject to a condominium regime if it is used for residential purposes, unless the state, home rule county, municipal corporation, or WMATA are the owner of the reversionary fee simple estate. And the bill adds an affordable housing land trust to this list.
And as you do recall from the hearing, a land trust is not the same, ladies and gentlemen, as a ground rent. So please do not get them confused. So what I would like to do, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm going to make a motion favorable for HB 216.
Second.
I'll second. HB 13. HB 13. I'm going to make a motion favorable for HB 13.
Second.
Second. Get a second?
Second.
Second. Very good. Now we're going to have a discussion about HB 13. Any discussion on HB 13? And if so, just go ahead and chime right in. We don't need to raise our hands. It's just a few of us. Any discussion on HB 13? Hearing none, I would like to take a vote on HB 13. All in favor of HB 13, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition on HB 13? Any abstentions on HB 13? Hearing none, then HB 13 will receive a favorable recommendation to the full committee on this coming Friday, perhaps for this coming Friday's hearing schedule. The next bill I'd like to discuss is HB 216. And HB 216, ladies and gentlemen, is a bill that we had. We have already heard this bill previously as well. This was a House bill. This was a bill that was in the House last year. And the bill that was in the House last year, it received a favorable vote, 106 to 31. And if Ben, you could do us a favor and give us a discussion of HB 216, I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so HB 216 establishes a procedure by which the governing body of a condominium may grant a lease in excess of 1 year or a similar interest affecting common elements of the condominium to install and use leased clean energy equipment. It doesn't have any amendments, it has no fiscal impact, and it's a straight reintroduction from last session.
Move favorable. Second.
It's been moved favorable and second. Is there any discussion on HB 216? Hearing no discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, Delegate Baker.
Yes, is this the exact same bill as last year?
Yes, Ben.
That's correct.
Yes, it's exact same bill as last year.
Okay, thank you.
Any addition? Delegate Naraki has a question. I don't see his hand.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
So this is the exact same bill from last year that would allow a vote simply by the board of directors, not the owners of the association, to move forward with this. That's how I recall the bill being last year's, and that's what it looks like to me. So I just wanted some clarification.
Ben?
Yeah, so it's subject to the board of directors by a majority vote or the council of unit owners by the affirmative vote of unit owners having at least 51% of the votes in the council.
And those definitions are only different based upon the entity that they are governing. Unit owners is HOAs, lot owners are condominiums. Does that answer the question?
That does answer my question, Mr. Chair. I still continue to have the same concerns I had last year. That can be a very small group of people potentially making a big decision for many people. I think same concerns I had last year. I think this is more appropriate for the larger ownership group to have a say in this process and not just a simple, vote by the board of directors.
I understand. Thank you, sir. Any additional discussion on HB 216? Hearing none, I'm going to take a roll call vote on HB 216. Delegate Allen.
Yes.
Delegate Boyce.
Yes.
Delegate Healy.
Aye.
Delegate Lehman.
Aye.
Delegate Long.
Aye.
Delegate Baker.
No.
Delegate Siliberti. No. Delegate
I think
Maraki.
he has to say that out loud, Mr. Chair.
He did say it out loud. He just muted.
No, I don't think you're allowed to just do that. That's what we were told in my subcommittee.
No. I'm
Delegate
unmuted.
Maraki.
No.
All right, this bill HB 213 will receive a favorable recommendation to the full committee. We will now turn to HB 143.
Too late now. I guess I voted right.
We got you, Barry. We got you, Barry.
Okay.
All right. We'll now turn to HB 143. HB 143. We had the hearing for HB 143 last week. And HB 143 in its previous posture received a vote 135-0. However, the reason why I wanted to have HB 143 last is because there are amendments on HB 143, which makes it different than last year. Now, the amendments, ladies and gentlemen, do not change the intent of the bill. It just has a couple of technical amendments to it. The whole objective of the bill and the concept of the bill from last year to this year are exactly the same, but there are some technical amendments that we had to add to the bill. And what I would like to do is to have Ben discuss the amendments first, and then after the amendments, we'll have a discussion about the bill with the amendments in its totality. Ben, talk about the amendments, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you like me to share my screen and the reprint? With
Yes,
that?
please.
Okay, one moment. So I believe, can everyone see the amendment?
Yes, make it a little bit larger.
Okay.
There you go. Just that's good. That's good. That's good.
Okay, so here we are. This is the amendment that was forwarded to everybody around noon today, and it's the most recent version of Delegate Foley's amendment that just makes a small technical correction in addition to the amendments that the delegate initially had in the bill. And like the chair said, it provides asbestos disclosures in condominium real estate contracts. So the first part is for the initial sale of a condominium unit. And that brings us to the first part of the bill and the amendment. And it requires that a contract of sale contain a notice of a statement as to whether the vendor, the seller, has actual knowledge of asbestos in the unit. And that's the technical correction to be more clear about what the bill is referring to. So instead of site, it's that the notice is for the actual condo unit, which is what is the subject of the initial sale.
If I may take a pause there for a minute, Ben. There are a couple of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you remind us, Mr. Voigt, of what the reference is to the vendor? Who is the vendor? How do they fit into this scenario?
Yep, the vendor is the seller. If that's helpful, that's the term that's used in the real property article.
I thought it was someone who had done abatement. The vendor is the seller?
Yes.
That's correct.
Why aren't they just called the seller, Chairman?
The real
Chair
property
Holmes?
article has a lot of intricacies, and yeah, that's so.
I don't want to go too deep in the woods on this, but I've also made a request that the entire real estate article be rewritten, and this is one of the reasons. But in this article right now, we're talking about vendor is the seller.
Okay, I've never noticed that term before in the context of a seller, but thank you. I was just curious. Thanks.
Okay. And the other explanation I'd like to give in terms of the amendment specifically, this goes specific to the amendment. You see that the words on the site are stricken, and in its place are the words in the unit.
Mm-hmm.
That is because the word site has no definition in the real property article. And unit is what is being defined here in terms of having notification of resale. That's why we have that technical amendment here on this technical amendment here being presented. And I want to make sure everyone understands this. The sponsor of the bill is in agreement with this amendment, with all of the amendments. Take it away, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so we'll move forward to the next part of the bill, and that'll be pretty much all of it. So the next part, we covered initial sale. Now we're covering the resale. The bill as amended we have in a contract for the resale of a unit by a unit owner other than the developer, must include 15 days prior to closing a certificate that, and they're replacing what was going to be actual knowledge, which is the struck language here. And this was discussed yesterday at the bill hearing, you may recall. They're replacing that struck language about actual knowledge with very similar language. The difference being that it's going to be more about just a blanket notice where it says, as you can see, if any part of the condominium was built before 1989, a statement that asbestos may have been used in connection with the condominium. So that's the first part of that. That's for the certificate prior to closing. And then there's a very similar part that's about the notice. Here we are with the notice of a sale. And they have, again, we're doing the same type of thing. The amendment is striking the actual knowledge and replacing it with the blanket notice. And we can see that down there.
So what we're going to do first, ladies and gentlemen, in standard procedure, is we're going to take a motion for the amendments first, all of them together. May I have,
Move the amendments.
is there a second?
Second.
Fantastic. Any discussion on the amendments of this bill? Hearing no amendments, I'm hearing no amendments. Hearing no no other questions on the amendments. All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
Delegate Baker has a hand up.
Oh, I can't see that. I'm so sorry. Delegate Baker?
You're on mute. You're on mute.
I see you, Delegate Holmes. Can you hear me now?
Sorry? Yes, sir.
The realtor's position on this, on the amendments, have they made any comments or anything?
Ben?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Wiggins was in attendance yesterday, and he was in support of that, as well as, and I believe that they were in agreement with the bill as amended.
So am I still on?
Yes, you are, sir.
Do you have any opposition currently?
Let's see, one
I
moment.
can't pull my screen up. I don't know how to do all of that and then
You're fine.
divide my screen.
No, there was no
I don't think-
opposition.
I don't think there is any opposition on this at all, Delegate Baker. Ben, correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
Okay.
you're correct, Mr. Chair.
And you said, Delegate Holmes, you said this bill was brought forward last year.
Yes, sir.
What was the vote on that last year?
I think it was 130.
5-0.
135 to 0. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Delegate Naraki.
Mr. Chair, I just have a technical question with respect to what the definition of a condominium. Is that like one building? If there's multiple buildings in a complex, could that be multiple buildings? Where I'm going with that, Mr. Chair, is we talk about buildings built before 1989, but what if there were, what if something was built after 1989 where a particular unit was, but there's others inside of a complex? So I was just trying to understand how that relates to the bill and to the amendment, just for a point of clarification.
Sure. Let me explain it to you and to everyone. The terms condominium, HOA, cooperative, etc., very rarely has anything to do with the type of structure that it is. The term condominium is a term that is used for the governing structure of the common ownership community. For example, sometimes if you see a townhouse development, most people look at that townhouse development and they assume that it is a HOA. Doesn't necessarily have to be an HOA. It could in fact be a condominium structure. A condominium is a legal term used for the governance of that common ownership community.
Okay, so then to that point, Mr. Chair, though, so if there were multiple buildings built inside of a community, some before, some after 1989, would this apply to all those buildings in that community? Would they still have to report if that unit was built after 1989? I'm just trying to like wrap my head around that part of it, how that would work with that language there.
I'm going to let Ben get to this point in a minute, but the notice provision that references 1989 simply is saying that asbestos was used pretty prevalently prior to 1989. It's much like when you see lead paint notices on houses being sold. If you sell a house, you will see a notice on the resale package or on your contract of sale that asks if the house was built prior to or after 1978. The reason why they ask that question in terms of lead paint is because prior to 1978, the prevalence of lead paint being used was quite frequent. But after 1978, they started having laws to prevent the sale of lead paint in 1978. This notice, which is referencing 1989, is in the same context to be used as the 1978 language used in lead paint. Ben, could you expand upon that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so, and just to get at the question, and hopefully this resolves some confusion, for the initial sale of a condominium, the bill requires a statement in the contract of sale as to whether the vendor, the seller, has actual knowledge of asbestos. Okay, so that's for the initial sale. For the resale of a condominium, so subsequent to the initial sale, that's when we have the blanket notice about any part of the condominium built before 1989. So with resale, it's if any part of the condominium was including facilities of the condominium, things like that, then there would be one of those blanket notices given.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. That clarifies that for me. Thank you.
Sure. Any additional discussion on the amendments? All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to the amendments? Any abstentions to the amendments? Seeing none, the amendments have been approved. Now the bill as amended. Do I have a motion on the bill as amended, please?
Move favorable on the bill as amended.
Thank you.
Second,
And
Second.
there's a second. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Hearing none, may I get a motion for the bill as amended, please?
So moved.
second,
And there's a second. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Hearing none, all in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, this bill will also receive a favorable recommendation from the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee to the full committee. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our meeting for today. I'll see you all next week.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Good
thank
night.
you. Good meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gracious, most
Right.
gracious.
Very productive.
Thank you.